Good morning, students. Today we will continue with the chapter of morphology of flowering plants. And topic of discussion of today is the flower and inflorescence. Flower is a modified shoot. A flower develops when apical meristem gets converted into floral bud. And this floral bud develops into a flower. Now, arrangement of flower on floral axis is called inflorescence. When flowers are arranged on the floral axis, it is known as inflorescence. Inflorescence is of two types: race moss inflorescence and moss inflorescence. Let us look at both the type of inflorescence. So first, let us talk about race moss inflorescence. In race moss inflorescence, the main axis continue to grow. If this is the main axis of a flower of a plant, then it will continue to grow, and flowers will be born laterally over this main axis in a acropetal manner. This is the main axis, which is continuously growing, and these are the flowers which are growing laterally on the main axis in a acropetal manner. Acropetal manner means youngest flower would be at the top and the oldest flower would be at the bottom. This is race moss inflorescence. Now let us talk about moss inflorescence. Under moss inflorescence, the main axis of a flower will terminate into a flower. So main axis will terminate into a flower. This is the main axis, and it has terminated into a flower. Now, flowers would be born on the lateral branches which would be coming out from this main axis. So these are the two lateral branches which are coming out from this main axis. So on these lateral branches, flower would be born. As you can see here, the main axis has terminated into a flower. So it means in cymose inflorescence, main axis does not grow indefinitely, but terminates into a flower. And here flowers are born basipetally, means the youngest flower would be at the bottom and the oldest would be at the top. So these were two types of inflorescence: racemose inflorescence and cymose inflorescence. In racemose, main axis continue to grow, whereas in cymose, main axis terminates into a flower. Now let us look at various structures of a flower. So let us draw a simple diagram of a flower and then look at its structure. So first let us draw a diagram of a flower. So if we look at the structure of a flower, then it has a stalk called pedicel. The pedicel is swollen from the end and that end is known as thalamus. The male part of the flower is known as stamen, which consists of two parts: the upper part known as anther and the long stalk known as filament. Both anther and filament forms the stamen. Female part of the flower is stigma, style, and ovary, which is known as carpel or the pistil. So, male part of the flower is stamen, which consists of filament and the anther. Female part of the flower is carpel, which consists of stigma, style, and ovary. The stalk of the flower is pedicel. The stalk is swollen at the end known as thalamus. Apart from this, a flower has sepals and this part which I am coloring are the petals. These are the accessory part of the flower. Now, the group of stamen is known as androecium. Group of stamens is known as androecium. Similarly, group of carpel is known as gynoecium. Sometimes in the flower, the sepals and the petals are not distinguishable. It is known as perianth. So perianth is that flower in which the sepals and petals are not distinguishable. Sometimes we have a leaf-like structure at the base of the pedicel. Here we have small leaf-like structure at the base of the pedicel. This leaf-like structure at base of the pedicel is known as bract. The flowers with bract are bracteate and the flowers without bract are ebracteate flowers. Now let us classify the flowers based on symmetry. So this is classification of flower. The first classification is based on symmetry. According to symmetry, a flower can be actinomorphic, zygomorphic, or asymmetrical. Actinomorphic are those flowers which can be divided into two equal halves in any radial plane. So they can be divided into two equal halves by any plane. Zygomorphic flowers are those flowers which can be divided into two equal halves by only one plane. And asymmetrical flowers are those flowers which cannot be divided into two equal halves by any plane. So this is classification of flower based on symmetry. Now let us classify the flower on basis of insertion to thalamus. On basis of insertion to thalamus, a flower can be hypogynous, perigynous, and epigynous. First of all, let us understand about hypogynous flower. In hypogynous flower, sepals, petals, and stamen are attached below the ovary to the receptacle or pedicel of a flower. Let us understand this with the help of diagram. So if this is the receptacle or pedicel of a flower, all the structures like stamen, petals, and sepals, stamen, petals, and sepals would be attached to the receptacle and these all would be inserted below the ovary. This is the ovary. But as you can see, all the structures which are sepals, petals, and stamen, they are attached here, which is on the receptacle, which is below to the insertion of the ovary. Ovary insertion is here. As you can see, I will show you. Ovary is inserted here, which I have drawn in blue. This is the point of ovary insertion. But all the parts, they are attached to the receptacle or they are inserted below the ovary. So this type of flower in which all parts are inserted below the ovary are said to be hypogynous flower, and here the ovary is said to be superior. So superior ovary is present here. Next type of flower on the basis of insertion to thalamus is perigynous. In perigynous flower, sepals, petals, and stamen are attached to hypanthium, which surrounds the ovary wall but does not fuse with it. The sepals, petals, and stamen are at same level. Let us understand this with the help of diagram. If this is the receptacle or the stalk or the pedicel, then the elongation of this pedicel is known as hypanthium. So this is hypanthium. This which I am coloring in red is which is the elongation of the pedicel or the stalk or the receptacle is the hypanthium. So this is the hypanthium. So all the things like the stamen, like the petals or the sepals would be inserted on this hypanthium, which is elongation of the pedicel, and this would surround the ovary, but it will not fuse with the ovary. And see, you can see the hypanthium, this is the ovary. Hypanthium is surrounding the ovary, but it is not fused with the ovary. And sepals, petals, and stamen are at the same level. As you can see, they are at the same level. So such type of flowers are known as perigynous flowers. Now let us talk about third type of flower on basis of insertion to thalamus, that is Epi Dinars Flower. In Epi Dinars flower, sepals, petals, and stamen are attached above the ovary to the hypanthium, which is fused with the ovary wall. Let us understand this with the help of diagram. So if this is the stalk or receptacle or pedicel, then the elongation of this pedicel is known as hypanthium. So this, which I have drawn in red, is the hypanthium. Which I am coloring in red is the hypanthium. This is the hypanthium. Now the ovary, it would be fused with the hypanthium. I am drawing ovary in blue color and it is now fused with the hypanthium. As you can see, this is the ovary which has fused with the hypanthium, and sepals, petals are attached here. At the top of the hypanthium, which means they are inserted above the ovary. So in Epi Dinars flower, first of all, the ovary is fused with the hypanthium and sepals, petals and stamen are attached above the ovary. Now let us understand part of the flowers in detail. The first part of the flower is calyx. Calyx are group of sepals. Sepals are green in color and it protects the flower in bud state. If sepals are fused together, it is known as gamosepalous, and if sepals are free, it is known as polysepalous. Second part of the flower is corolla. Corolla is group of petals. Petals are colorful to attract insects. If the petals are fused together, it is known as gamopetalous, and if petals are free, it is known as polypetalous. Now let us talk about estivation. Estivation is arrangement of sepals and petals in floral bud. So how the sepals and petals are arranged in a floral bud, that arrangement is called estivation. Let us look at different type of estivation. The first type of estivation is valvate estivation. In valvate estivation, sepals and petals are arranged in such a manner that they just touch each other at the margin. Without any overlapping. Let us draw its diagram. So this is the sepals which I am drawing. either take all sepals or either take all petals. So these are the sepals. So this is the first sepal, this is the second sepal, similarly the third one and the fourth one. So you can see the ends of the first petal is just very close contact with the second, but there is no overlapping. So a estivation in which there is no overlapping and the margin of sepals or petals just touch each other is known as velvet estivation. Now let us talk about second type of estivation, which is twisted estivation. In twisted estivation, sepals and petals are arranged such that one margin of sepal overlap the next one and so on. Let us understand this with the help of diagram. This is twisted estivation. This is the first sepal, this is the second, third, fourth and fifth. As you can see, the first sepal is being overlapped by the second sepal is being overlapped by the third sepal is being overlapped by the fourth, and fourth sepal is being overlapped by the fifth. So in this, one margin of sepal is overlapping the next one and so on. This type of estivation is known as twisted estivation. Now let us look at third type of estivation, which is imbricate estivation. In imbricate estivation, sepals and petals overlap but in no particular fashion. Let us draw an example. This is the first petal, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth, and this is the fifth petal. As you can see here, first petal is being overlapped by the second petal is being overlapped by the third, but third petal is not overlapped by the fourth. So there is overlapping but in no continuous fashion. This type of estivation is imbricate estivation. The fourth type of estivation is vexillary estivation. In vexillary estivation, there is one large petal which is known as standard petal. It overlaps two small lateral petals which are known as wings, and these lateral petals further overlap two anterior petals which is known as keel. This is vexillary estivation in which there is one large petal which is known as standard petal. This is the large petal, standard petal. It overlaps two lateral petals known as wings. These are the two lateral petals, and which further overlap two anterior petal which is known as keel. These are the two anterior petals known as keel. Now let us talk about androecium. Androecium means group of stamen. If a stamen is sterile, means it does not produce pollen grain, then it is known as staminode. And if the stamen is attached to the petal, it is called epipetalous. Similarly, if the stamen is attached to perianth, it is known as epiphyllous. If the stamens are fused, it is known as cynandrous. And if the stamens are free, it is known as polyandrous. Now let us look at type of cynandrous stamens, means type of fused stamen. The first type of cynandrous stamen is monoadelphous, means stamen united in one group. Let us see the diagram. If this is the thalamus, this is the stalk of the flower, this is the thalamus, then this would be these are the stamens which are united in one group. So these type of stamens which are united in one group are known as monoadelphous. The second type of stamen are diadelphous, when stamens are united in two bundles. This is the diagram of diadelphous stamen. This is the one group of stamen and this is the other group of stamen. So this is group 1 and this is group 2. So these stamens are diadelphous. The third type of stamen is polyadelphous, when stamens are united in more than one bundle. For example, if this is the stamen, these are the first group of stamens, then these are the second group of stamens, these are the third group of stamens, and this is the fourth group of stamen. So this is group 1, group 2, group 3 and group 4. So such type of stamens in which they are united in more than one bundle are known as polyadelphous. Now let us talk about gynoecium, which is group of carpel. Each ovary bear one or more ovule. Each ovary has ovule which is attached to it by placenta. Let us understand this line with the help of diagram. If this is the ovary wall, this is the wall of the ovary, then these would be the ovules and the structure which I am drawing in red is the funiculus. So this is the ovary wall. These are the ovules. This is the funiculus, and funiculus attaches to the ovary wall with the help of placenta, which I have drawn in green color. So each ovary has ovule which is attached to the ovary wall with the help of placenta. Now, arrangement of placenta within the ovary arrangement of ovule within the ovary is called placentation. There are various kinds of placentation which are marginal, parietal, axial, free central, and basal. Let us understand each one of them with the help of diagram. So the first type of placentation is marginal. In marginal placentation, placenta is present at the margin. If this is ovary, then the structure which I am growing in green and the margin of this ovary would be present the placenta, and on this placenta would be attached the ovule which I am drawing in red here. These are the ovules. So such placentation in which placenta is present at the margins and on this placenta at the margin ovule are attached is marginal placentation. Example of this placentation is pea plant. Now the next type of placentation is parietal. In parietal placentation, placenta is present at the peripheral wall of the ovary. So if this is the ovary, this is the ovary, and the placenta would be present at the parietal wall. So this is the placenta which is present at the parietal, or you can say the peripheral wall, and over here would be attached the ovule. These are the ovules. You can also draw this diagram in simpler manner which is given in NCERT, which is this diagram can also be drawn. See, here the placenta is present at the peripheral walls. So these are the ovules present at peripheral walls. The next type of placentation is axial placentation. Here placenta is axial and ovary is multilocular, means it has more than one compartment. Let us draw the diagram. So if this is the ovary, then it would be multilocular, means it would have many compartments, as I have drawn 4 compartments here. This would be the placenta. This is the placenta. This is the ovary. And these are the ovules which are attached to the placenta. The classical example of this is lemon. The next type of placentation is free central. In free central placentation, ovary is unilocular, means it has only one compartment and placenta is present in the center. So if this is the ovary, then this is the placenta, this is the ovary, this is the placenta, and here would be the ovules. These are the ovules. This is free central type of placentation. The last type of placentation is basal. In basal, ovule is present at the base of the ovary. So if this is the ovary, which I am drawing in red color, this is the ovary, then the structure which I am drawing green is placenta, which is also present at the bottom, and ovule would be attached to it. So at the bottom, this is the ovule. So these are the 5 types of placentation. If you like this video, do subscribe to my channel and comment.